Well, welcome to our 2008 Greece vacation. The first pictures here are pictures of our journey to Kavala. Kavala was the port city to Philippi, which was about 10 miles away. It was first called Neapolis. And the road that you see here is one of the roads that Paul possibly and probably did walk on. It was called the Via Egnatia. It was a major Roman highway that came from Thessalonica, and so this is the start of our journey in Greece today. Okay, our next pictures are a site that they've memorialized for Lydia's, where Paul met Lydia when he went outside the city to pray. Lydia was converted, if you remember correctly, and then later it led to the Philippian jailer also being converted, which was the start really of the Philippi church. But here at this site is the water that you can see where they went out to pray, and the reason they went out of town, we were told, was because they would go out from the city where it was, because they considered inside the city where the Gentiles were to be unclean. But this is the site, and this is where she made purple dye, and that was made from snails, of all things. And the purple probably would have been, not as we think of purple, but it probably would have been a deep red color. And they could make them different colors by doing a lot of different work. Now the dye from the snails was used only on silk. They didn't use it on animal materials. All the animal materials like wool and lambskin and all was always white. Going back to the entrance of Lydia's stream, this is just a small Roman cemetery that you see here. Now we go to Philippi, which was the first stop on our ruins that we saw. It was pretty good. This first picture is just a picture of the entranceway, what they call the agora, the center of social activity. Our Bible usually interprets it as marketplace, which is really not quite correct, because there's a lot more than just a marketplace. The Philippi was not a very large city compared to some of the other cities, but it was rich in history. Biblically, it was the place where Europe received it was the first city in Europe to receive the gospel. And there were some famous names related to some famous wars that had to do with the Roman history. Brutus, who killed Julius Caesar, him and Cassius were defeated by Mark Antony here in 42 BC. So it's real rich in history that ties into the Romans, which ties in again to the Bible. But you remember the Apostle Paul came here and he was tried here and whipped here. So there's a lot of biblical history that goes to Philippi too. This was a great experience, especially this is our first stop. This picture here is Sharon standing in the front of the agora, but right behind her, where her right hand is there on the rail, that sand right there is where the judgment seat would have been. And we'll talk more about that. That's called the bema. We'll talk more about that later, especially at Corinth, because we see a beautiful setup of the bema. And we took some pictures of that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more there. This is a picture back at the entranceway where the bema seat was from the corner. In fact, it's the corner where the military section was, where Paul would have been sentenced. And we'll see a couple pictures of that room as well. That's a picture of the corner where the military section would be, where Paul was sentenced. I am standing right where Paul would have stood before his accusers, somewhere right in that area in the corner. He would have been judged and found guilty before he was whipped in front of the Bema seat that we saw earlier. There's another picture of it. This kind of walkway you see that went around it would have been raised up a little bit where the accusers would have sat, where the military people would have sat and judged the Apostle Paul. And this is a picture of the public bathroom. They didn't have, as you see, any dividers between them. They weren't real modest. This is an adult baptistry. And this is a baptistry as well. That part on the right there is where you walk in, but it was in the shape of a cross. And this is the theater at Philippi. I'm not sure how many thousand it held. I know the larger one in Athens held about 25,000. But the word theater came from theos, which means God. Our next stop is Thessaloniki, and that's the Aegean Sea. That wall went all the way down to the Aegean Sea. I don't think it goes all the way down there now. They called this little Jerusalem. You can tell probably because of the size of the walls. This picture here is the front of the old synagogue that was downtown in the old part of Thessaloniki. We went into that and experienced. It was quite an experience to see such an old synagogue. It was built in an area where they lived right next to it, and the area was built like in a square, you might say, which kind of protected itself. They had their own little city. This is a picture of where the Torah was kept. During the time of Hitler, he surrounded the city on the Sabbath, knowing that he could catch them. You know, they'd all be there on the Sabbath, and that's how he got them. Again with the Torah, and that's our guide Costas. And that's just a picture from the edge of the city. Our next pictures are of the tomb of King Philip II. In fact, the first picture is an outside look of what it pretty much looked like when they found it. And there's the entranceway. We went inside, and there was a museum underneath that hill. But it's supposed to be one of the most, or the greatest finds since King Tut's tomb. We're talking about 4th century BC before Christ, and we're talking about the father of Alexander the Great, who is well known to all of us in history as it had conquered, pretty much the entire known world at that time, and until the Romans came, and had started the Koine Greek language, which was what they spoke the day that when Jesus walked on the earth. I think one of the most interesting things that we learned was the difference of a wreath and a diadem and a crown, and they found several gold wreaths in this tomb, as well as his crown and crowns and so on, diadems and so on of the queen. And so this was a great find, and it was very interesting, and it means a lot more to us in the history now of leading up to Jesus. These next pictures are a place inland in Greece called Meteora. There's several different pictures you're going to get of different monasteries, but we went into one monastery. These monasteries were built during the 14th century. Monks used to climb up into the caves, and after a while they finally built monasteries, but they were seeking refuge to get away from the immorality of the towns and the cities and of the world, and they separated themselves. This is where we really supposedly get the term hermit, because they would become hermits. But there was 25 of these originally, and Hitler destroyed all but 5 of them. They are beautiful inside. Just the paintings and stuff are just beautiful on the walls and the ceilings and statues and so on. It's just a marvelous sight, as you can tell. These next pictures are of a famous historical battle that was fought at a place called Thermopyle, which was close to Athens. 300 Spartans plus 700 other various people, but the main fighters and soldiers were the Spartans, which we have movies of today. But this was a battle fought in 480 BC. about 1,300 men fought off 1,700,000 Persians that were sent in by King Xerxes, which is mentioned in the book of Daniel. So it does tie into biblically, and these men fought off these over 1 million men, Persians. This place that you see, what we're standing, is kind of on a small hill, and the place was completely surrounded, almost completely, by water, so it was almost an island, and there was just a small pass for the Persians to come after them. They killed 6,000 of the Persians the first day that tried to come through. They killed a special forces group that came in the next day. And the third day, the Persians just overwhelmed them with over 1 million arrows that they sent at them. And so this is an important historical place, because Greece was really saved because of this 3-day delay. They were able to rearrange their naval forces. They were able to get the people out of Athens before the Persians totally burned and destroyed Athens, and the people were able to escape, and so that saved the people of Athens. Now we enter into the city of Athens, which is a large city, 4.5 million people. The buildings are huge, and most of them made of marble. Very solid looking. That is a picture of the Acropolis, or the Parthenon, which is part of the Acropolis, the highest place of the city. Of course, there's a theater. Again, another view of the theater. Another theater, but with a view of Athens in the background. Beautiful, beautiful place. The summit, the Acropolis is the summit, the high place. You can see the city always from the Acropolis. The Parthenon, there it is. The Parthenon is the most famous of all the temples in history, and it's supposed to be an archaeological marvel the way they build it. It has a lot of allusions to it, the way it was made, and without computers. So it's really a sight to see. It was built to the goddess Athena. Inside was a big statue of her, and she was made of gold and ivory. The Parthenon was built 400 BC. There's a picture of us in front of it. Kind of gives you some idea of size. This is another temple that wasn't too far away. I think this was a temple to Apollo, and if I remember correctly, he had supposedly defeated the god Delphi, which means Python. And so they built that temple to him. It wasn't too far from the Parthenon, just right next to it almost. And that's part of our group, and Costas, our guide, tour guide. There's the Parthenon from the side. Again, the temple of Apollo. Everything they did had something to do with gods and goddesses. It's really amazing. There's a picture of Mars Hill from the Acropolis, from the Parthenon. And we're going to go to Mars Hill next and talk about it. There's just a picture of us with the city of Athens behind us. Look at all those buildings. It's quite a sight. Again, the city of Athens. See how huge everything is? Look how little we look there. The next pictures are of Mars Hill, where Paul preached to the people of Athens about their idols to the unknown God, and he told them who the unknown God is, that it was Jesus Christ. They listened to him, but they apparently didn't receive well. This is in the book of Acts. Mars Hill at this time, probably the population of Athens was only about 150,000. This was a public place, and they would have a platform on the top where a judge could sit. They would have trials up there that the accuser could sit, the jury could sit, and there was the steps that you see us walking on here. The one step is the newer steps, but the one with me standing in the middle are the older steps in which the Apostle Paul himself probably used. Mars means the god of war, and this was a very public place. I'll never think the same of Mars Hill. It used to be just a place, but now I can just see it so clearly, the rock and the steps, and it's a beautiful sight overlooking the city of Athens. You'll see one picture here with us, our group sitting on the top, and our tour guide gave us his testimony. It was really a powerful testimony. Now we come to the city of Corinth. The city of Corinth was a huge city. They've only excavated about 5% of the city, and we found a lot of ruins. The first two pictures here are just a man-made canal that they made for shipping, which is about 3 miles long. It's a pretty amazing canal. The pictures you see with the large hill in the back has at the very top the Acropolis of Corinth. We did not visit it. They said there's not much left except a little bit of the foundation. And then we come to some of the ruins. The first part was considered to be the theater part. It had a small theater. And I wanted you to see this stone. The stone has the name Erastus, and in the Greek it says this. It says, Erastus in return treasurership on his own paved. Erastus is mentioned in 3 scriptures: Acts 19:22, 2 Timothy 4:20, and Romans 16:23. He's called, in the King James, he's called the Chamberlain, but he was the treasurer of the city, and what that was saying was that he dedicated the paved road that came into Corinth. He apparently was a very, very wealthy man. We have more pictures now as we just look at one or two more of the Acropolis in the background and the ruins, and we have some headless statues of their gods and goddesses, I guess. We're coming to some pictures I want to start talking about.